On This Week in Enterprise Tech, we have Mr. Curtis Franklin and Miss Heather Williams on the show today. Now, what if you found out that medical device makers skimp on security practices? Did you question the one you're using? We'll talk lots to talk about there. Now, the pandemic has accelerated many areas of the industry, but one area, digital signatures, has actually exploded. Today, we have Mrugesh Chandarana. He's Director of Product Management at HID Global, and we're going to discuss the evolution of digital signatures and just how secure and trustworthy they really are. Definitely shouldn't miss it. TWiET on the set.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is TWiET, This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 491, recorded April 29th, 2022. Sign on the dots. This episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by Thanks Canary. Detect attackers on your network while avoiding irritating false alarms. Get the alerts that matter. For 10% off and a 60-day money-back guarantee, go to canary.tools/TWiT and enter the code TWiT in the How Do You Hear About Us box. And by PlexTrack, the proactive security management platform. Save time and increase productivity with the premier cybersecurity reporting and workflow management product designed to support the complete security lifecycle from assessment through remediation. Visit plextrack.com/TWiT to claim your free month. And by Compiler, an original podcast from Red Hat discussing the tech topics big, small, and strange. Listen to Compiler on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you listen to your podcasts. Welcome to TWiET, This Week in Enterprise Tech, the show that is dedicated to you, the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and that geek who just wants to know how this world's connected. I'm your host, Louis Maresca, your guide through this big world of the enterprise. But I can't guide you by myself. I need to bring in the professionals and the experts. Plus, I love ending my week with my favorite set of people, starting with Mrs. Heather Williams. She's Senior Management at Tirana Wireless. It's always great to see you. How have you been? It's been a while.
It has been a while, hasn't it? Even through the telescoping of time with COVID, it's still been a while.
I know.
I've been great. Thank you.
Now, you've been living the startup world. That means running at 110% all the time. How's that going?
Pretty nonstop. I love it, but I'll be glad when I'm not having to live in multiple time zones at the same time at one desk.
I hear you. Well, welcome back. We're excited to have you back. We have lots to talk about today, and we're glad you're here. Now, we also have to welcome back our favorite journalist and security analyst. He's a senior analyst at Omdia, and he's Mr. Curtis Franklin. Curtis, welcome back to the show. How's the Sunshine State treating you? Say that 5 times fast.
The Sunshine State is great. Just sitting down here, soaking up the sunshine and watching the world of cybersecurity fly by. Lots of stuff going on, lots of things to write, and a huge conference to get ready for. We'll be talking about that a little bit later on in the program, but the invitations for meetings are coming in fast and furious.
Well, speaking of lots of things going on, it's definitely been a busy week in the enterprise. Now, we talk a lot about security on this show and on this network, but it seems the theme for wearables and IoT devices, they don't pay close attention to security. But what if you found out that many medical devices actually skimp on security practices? Would you question the one you were just prescribed? Well, we have lots to talk about there. Plus, the pandemic has accelerated many areas of the industry, including one area that's in fact exploded, and that's digital signatures. Today, we have Mrugesh Chandarana. He's Director of Product Management at HID Global, and we're going to discuss the evolution of digital signatures and just how secure and trustworthy they really are. So stick around. We have lots to talk about. But before we get to all those tech topics, we have to go and talk about what's going on in the world of the enterprise. So let's go ahead and jump into this week's News Blips. Now, the Emotet botnet is the botnet that just won't go away. Not only because it evolves over time, but it adjusts its deployment mechanism whenever previous vulnerabilities are patched. They seem to move at the speed of the market here. Now, recently, VBA macros were disabled the previous way to deploy. Well, they needed another route to get those to those machines. And the botnet is now using Windows shortcut files or LNK files containing PowerShell commands to infect victims' computers. Now, you may remember they used to use shortcut files before, but it was to actually execute Visual Basic scripts to download other payloads. Now, this is the first time they're actually using them to directly execute PowerShell scripts. Now, the malicious string used to execute the file is appended to an LNK file, but here's the trick. The string is obfuscated and padded with a bunch of nulls so that it doesn't show in the target field of the file's properties dialog box. So if you actually look at the properties box, you don't actually see. You see just the executable name. Now, if you look at the Explorer, it doesn't show anything. It's pretty tricky. Now, this script generates and launches another PowerShell script that will then download the Emotet malware from a list of compromised sites and save it to the temp folder. Now, the download DLL is then executed using the reg server 32 executable command. That now ESET's telemetry data shows that the countries most infected or affected by Emotet via the new technique is actually Mexico, Italy, Japan, Turkey, and Canada. Now, what can you do to protect yourself? Well, the first thing is start with maybe securing how PowerShell can execute on your machines. There are actually numerous policies you can set, including ones around execution and sign scripts. Plus, check out Windows Defender Application Control. Can definitely help out. Now, in order to fight against these exploits, closing the door can cut them off at the knees. Well, until they find another way to get to you.
Well, if there's one thing cybersecurity and IT executives agree they need more of, it's visibility into the systems they manage. There's often a shocking lack of visibility into enterprise networks and application delivery systems, a lack that's exploited by threat actors when their reconnaissance let them know more about the environment than the executives do. Earlier this week, vulnerability and cybersecurity assessments firm Tenable announced plans to acquire BitDiscovery, a 4-year-old attack surface management startup, in a deal valued at $44.5 million. In this deal, Tenable hopes to strengthen its capabilities for gathering external information on networks and giving customers more visibility into their digital footprint. According to Tenable, it intends to integrate BitDiscovery's technology into all of its products, including its well-known Nessus vulnerability scanning platform, and use the technology to augment its ability to analyze internal networks. Tenable expects to complete the acquisition this quarter. And it should be noted that this acquisition is just the latest industry move to underscore the importance of attack surface management capabilities. Earlier this month, Google announced it would buy Mandiant, which had previously acquired Intrigue, which was an ASM startup. In February, cybersecurity automation firm Darktrace announced it would acquire ASM firm Cybersprint for nearly $54 million. And in November, cyber risk firm Team Kimru stated it would purchase Amplicy, 2-year-old startup company focused on attack surface discovery, in a deal, well, whose value we still don't know.
Malware by any other name. A recent dark reading article by Robert Lemos provides some, if not rare, at least uncommon good news for industrial control systems, or ICS, security professionals. Because of the nature of ICS attacks, they can sometimes be categorized as terrorism, making information about the attack or the successful thwarting of them classified. This means that even when there is good news, it sometimes cannot be shared. In this case, however, security researchers were able to discover the new malware, learn about how the attackers operate, and create mitigations before an attack was launched in the wild. 2 separate reports on this new malware were released 2 weeks ago. Mandiant, a managed response firm, has dubbed it In Controller, and in a corporate blog said that it is, quote, very likely state-sponsored and contains capabilities related to disruption, sabotage, and potentially physical destruction, unquote. On the same day, Dragos, a company that specializes in ICS security, released the report on the malware, calling it Pipedream, and have attributed it to a threat activity group they call TWIET. It's interesting to note that the naming of a piece of malware is accorded to the security researchers that identify and document it first. Mandiant and Dragos have a history of near-simultaneous announcements with different names, such as the 2016 attack on the Ukrainian electric grid dubbed InDestroyer by Mandiant and Crash Override by Dragos. For those of you who grew up in the part of the US I did, having to learn 2 names for most of the Civil War battles was good preparation for navigating these waters. Regardless of what you call it, this is the 7th known ICS-specific malware, and it can manipulate a wide variety of industrial control programmable logic controllers, or PLCs, and industrial software. These include Omron and Schneider Electric controllers, and ubiquitous industrial technologies such as Modbus and Open Platform Communications Unified Architecture. This means that Pipedream can affect a significant percentage of industrial assets worldwide, and its modular nature means that there could be versions that attack other vendors besides Schneider Electric and Omron PLCs. Dragos recommends against focusing on the equipment vendor and instead on the tactics and techniques the adversary is leveraging. On a personal note, as a self-described InfoSec and ICS junkie, I would like to wish everyone at Dragos a happy birthday as they celebrate their 6th anniversary this week. Thank you for standing at the front lines of our infrastructure security.
As an electrical engineer, superconductors have always really fascinated me. In fact, in the 20th century and beyond, no one can tackle the barrier of making a superconducting electrons go in just one direction, which is actually a fundamental property needed for computing and other modern electronics. Now, in normal conduction, the electrons fly around as separate particles. In superconductors, they move in pairs of twos without loss of electrical energy. Imagine if you can have interconnects or wires that have no loss in energy. Well, according to the researchers at Delft University of Technology, they have discovered one-way superconductivity without magnetic fields. That's right. By using quantum materials and modulating between two superconductors, they're able to achieve the same stable flow without a magnetic field. Now, the researcher papers are actually a well worth reading there, but the question you might be asking yourself, what does this discovery mean in terms of actual applications? Well, lots of older technology is based off the Josephson junction superconductors, like, for instance, MRI machines. Now, technology that was previously only possible using semiconductors or semiconductors can now potentially be made with superconductors using these new building blocks. Now, this includes faster computers. In fact, think about a computer that had the clock speed in the terahertz. Now, who knows? The 21st century could become the century of the superconductor. Well, folks, that does it for the blips. Next up, we have the bites. But before we get to the bites, we do have to thank a really great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's Thinks Canary. Now, if there's anything we've learned the last year is that companies must make it a priority to layer the security in their networks. Now, one of these layers needs to be Thinks Canary. Unfortunately, companies usually find out too late they've been compromised, even after they've already spent millions on IT security. Now, attackers are really sneaky. Unbeknownst to companies, they prowl your networks looking for the valuable data. But the great thing about Canary is they have turned this into your advantage. That's right. While attackers browse Active Directory for file servers and explore file shares, they'll be looking for documents. They'll try default passwords to get network devices and web services, and they'll scan for open services across the network. Thinks Canaries are designed to look like the things that hackers want to get to. The canaries can be deployed throughout the entire network, and you can make them look identical to a router, a switch, a NAS server, a Linux box, a Windows server, so attackers won't know they've been caught. You can put fake files on them, and you can name them in ways that get the attention of those hackers. And when attackers investigate further, they give themselves away, and you're instantly notified. Now, canary tokens act as tiny tripwires that you can drop in hundreds of places. Now, Canary is designed to be installed and configured in minutes, and you won't have to think about them again. And if your alert happens, Canary will notify you any way you want, and you won't be inundated with those false alarms. You can get alerts by email or text message directly on your console through Slack, webhooks, syslog, or even their API. Now, data breaches happen typically through your staff, and when they actually do, companies often don't know they've been compromised. It takes an average of 191 days for a company to realize there's been a data breach. Canary solves that problem. Now, Canary is created by people who have trained companies, militaries, and governments on how to break into networks, and with the knowledge, they built Canary. You'll find Canary deployed all over the world and are one of the best tools against data breaches. Visit canary.tools/TWiT. And for just $7,500 per year, you'll get 5 canaries, your own hosted console, upgrade, support, and maintenance. And if you use code TWIT in the How to Hear About Us box, you'll get 10% off the price for life. We know you'll love your Thinks Canary, but if you're not happy, you can always return the canaries with their 2-month money-back guarantee for a full refund. That's canary.tools/TWIT and enter the code TWIT in the How to Hear About Us box. And we thank Things Canary for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, it's now time for the bites. Now, it seems that the theme for wearables and IoT devices today is that they don't really pay close attention to security. Well, medical devices are now getting scrutinized as well and are kind of blanketed under similar reviews. And that means cybersecurity can now be measured in life and death as well. Now, in a new report published by Sabellum called Medical Device Cybersecurity Trends and Predictions, it collected from 150 security and compliance decision makers in the medical device industry worldwide. Now, and the truth came out and was that only 27% of them said that they generate or maintain what they call a software bill of materials on their devices. That means that you know what your software and services are actually made up of. For instance, what if your service was made up of Log4j? There was a lot of vulnerabilities that went in there. Well, if you don't know that, you don't know your device is vulnerable. Now, the most implemented security measures that these device companies did have in the survey is actually running binary code analysis. In fact, 47% of them said they did that, and setting security requirements during the design phase. So 46% said they did that. Now, the good news here is that half of the security decision makers at medical devices companies say that they are using at least one of those techniques, at least. And the flip side, more than half do not use them. Now, the other techniques that are using to secure their products include source code static analysis, which is actually important to find out if there's any malicious code entered in there. And they're performed by only 41% of the respondents. They use threat intelligence, 39%, continuous security testing across the device lifecycle, that's by 38%. Educating developers on how to write secure code, that's only 27%. Pen testing and fuzzing, only 16%. And dynamic application security testing, 14%. Ugh. Now, looking at the data segmented by the types of companies, the bill of materials is the most popular with OEMs at 34%, and compared to suppliers of actual medical devices, only 20%. Now, this is very interesting because obviously, when you develop a device, it could have a service on it, it could be a piece of software. You want to know what that software is made out of. Normally, it's either composed of your own software, your own binaries that you write yourself as an organization, or it can be composed of pieces of other, whether it's say open source or even just dependent on other libraries that are written by companies that you pay to license them from them. But all in all, you should know exactly what's being made up in there. So it's very interesting to see that medical devices don't always do that. Now I want to bring my co-host in. Curtis, I want to throw this to you first. Obviously in the enterprise, when you deploy a service, you're going to want to know what it's made out of. So if there's any issues going on with it, if there's any vulnerabilities, whatnot, you'll know that you need to go patch it, or you have to take down the service or secure it in some way. Medical devices should be, I feel like, even more secure than that. These are things that could be managing people's lives. Is there any restrictions around this? Is there any things that medical devices should be following here that are required to follow for that type of thing?
Well, there are things that they're required to follow, and it's important to note that we're using a very precise term here, medical device. Medical devices must be certified by the FDA. Now, that means that all of these devices must pass certification by the FDA. And that carries with it a whole bunch of stuff, and that's probably, now I'm going to admit, my primary expertise is not in medical device certification, but I strongly suspect that what we're dealing with is a certification process that accepts these software bills of materials as being a certifiable way of attesting to the safety of the software. That also carries with it the fact that once the device is certified, if they make a change to the software, then they must go through a recertification process. And that explains why these device manufacturers are so reluctant to do what seems to us as software professionals, as IT professionals, to be very common sense, very simple software updates, because doing so would trigger a very expensive recertification process. It's complicated because you have a process that is designed to ensure maximum safety that inadvertently ensures maximum software vulnerability. And it's difficult to know how to get around that without some major reworking of the process. And anyone who's worked around government knows that major reworking of a process is a multi-year, multi-billion-dollar process.
Right. Now, I want to throw this to you because if we relate this a little bit to healthcare and how they sometimes manage their networks or their services, they're not always the best, right?
But actually, I think that if you go back to that article and look at the chart, the only thing that's more terrifying than the than those numbers is a visit to the biohacking village at DEF CON. So this really isn't new, but I think what it highlights here is that the healthcare industry as a whole, the medical device field, they're bringing along the same bad habits that we've seen in other consumer grade IoT, even prosumer and enterprise grade. The concept of sec DevOps is still really poorly used and poorly implemented. I think what gets our attention with this is that now we're looking at, is it your pacemaker, or is it your insulin pump that's being hacked? But more importantly, I think this is something that could easily get missed, is it's not necessarily that some bad actor is going to come in and jack with your insulin, because who's going to gain from that? I mean, it's terrifying to think of. But more importantly is the protected health information, the PHI, that all of these devices will inherently have with them. So those devices being insecure, we could be worried about somebody messing with your pacemaker, but the value of that PHI, because it has a long shelf life, all of that special information about you, your medical records, and other information about you. If you go out into the dark web, and I did a little research before the show today, your personal information, including like a credit card, is sometimes pennies on the dollar, a couple of dollars. But PHI information for one person can go for hundreds of dollars, and so that's going to incentivize these bad actors. And if you're basically rolling out, the drawbridge and saying, "Here we are, come and get us," and not having good, sound development practices and update practices, then you're just inviting an ongoing problem.
I totally agree. Now, the interesting thing I find here is the fact that they listed some of these responses in some of these medical companies, and they're not doing things that even normal software companies that don't have as much needed for trust. Actually, medical devices, I feel like, should have even a higher level of trust and reliability than other things. Like, for instance, a service that might provide you with address data or whatnot. But I think it's interesting that they, like, for instance, only 16% of them don't do fuzzing. 60% only do fuzzing. 16% is really low for that many respondents. Obviously these are normal things that organizations go through to ensure that their devices, their code, their services are being secured. Are you seeing other organizations doing these types of things and guaranteeing, is it part of the normal flow of business normally?
I wish I could say yes. I wish I could. I don't know. I think it's one of those things that until somebody gets bit on the butt, that nothing's really going to make it change. I feel like, the little chicken running around saying the sky is falling, but the reality is we've baked into the development processes some fairly bad habits. And I agree with Curt. If you look to the government, this is going to take, a vast amount of time. I think that we have to look to the industries, to the vendors, to start demanding these best practices and really doing their due diligence, true due diligence, not just a checkbox on a pen test.
Right. I see a lot. I mean, I see a lot of like mostly coming from education too. Like they talked about a little bit about how they only have people go through secure coding practices, how there's very little of them. 27% only said that they provide their developers with secure coding best practices. Curt, this is obviously something you see probably a lot in the industry when it comes to security even, is that educating the people that are managing it or even developing it is usually the first defense that you should be doing. Is this something that could help maybe if they increase that to say, hey, like this is the things that you should be doing, and have like a third party kind of come along and determine whether the organizations are doing that in order to secure these things more?
Well, as someone who was a manager of a testing company for a while, I will say it's tough enough getting companies to commit to testing for reliability, for functionality. And I think that in the, Mo mentioned the DevSecOps world, and unfortunately for too many companies in DevSecOps, users have become the QA testers. That's the unstated part of too many agile development pipelines. So it's one thing if you're talking about a word processor, it's an entirely different thing if you're talking about an insulin pump. I wish that we were teaching more about this in our colleges and universities. I mean, this goes back, I was in a computer science program a very long time ago. And even back then, when we were carving zeros and ones into stone tablets, very few people talked about, things like code reliability. The assumption was that if you somehow got your algorithm to translate to code, then that was what was required to have a proper application. And in a great deal of the time, that mentality hasn't changed. Anything beyond that, whether we're talking about something like, the capability maturity model for, reliability or code security, any of that is considered to be an afterthought that is going to be taught on a company by company basis. And that's just not working as well as it should. And no one seems to really be willing to address the problem. I mean, lots of people talk about it. Mo knows as well as I do. You go to any of the security conferences and you'll find lots of people jabbering about it. But none of those people have the authority to make substantive changes in the way code is developed in the vast number of companies out there. If only we could talk to someone who developed code for a major company and find out if security is somehow a priority. I don't know.
Right? Who did we talk to there? I agree. I definitely agree with both of you. I think that, again, the first thing that most developers get when they come to Microsoft is there's a book that, it was written a little bit ago, but it's still relevant today. It's called Secure Code. And it's a pretty long book, but it's just a really revolutionary book for somebody who's coming out of, college or whatnot, who hasn't really thought about that. They thought about developing software and all the different ways to do it, but really how to secure software. You don't actually learn that in the education system today. And so I think it's a really great book to start off with, but obviously, all the other modern trainings that are out there today around modern exploitation in both software and security, software and services is needed as well to kind of supplement a lot of that stuff as well. And so we always have those consistently weekly for people to attend. And I think that's a really interesting thing as well, because that just means that the industry is going to be fine. If obviously if companies like Microsoft and Google and Apple are having to pay and do these types of things and spend this type of dollar to keep their people up to speed, what does that mean for even some of the smaller industries and some of the smaller businesses out there? And I think it's a big challenge, and it will continue to be a big challenge for everybody. So, I do agree. There's got to be a little bit of a shift at some point to help some of these smaller businesses. Well, I think we've exhausted that one. I do want to leave some time for the guests, so I think it's time to move on. My next segment is our guests. That's my favorite part of the show. We'll bring the guests in, bring our co-host back in. But before we do have to thank another great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's PlexTrack, the premier cybersecurity reporting and workflow management platform that empowers teams to win the right security battles. Now, what if you could streamline the communication across the entire security department so that every member could do their job more efficiently? I got you thinking, right? Well, from simplified data aggregation and reporting to integrated ticketing for remediation to analytics and visualizations for board reporting, PlexTrack touches every aspect of the security management workflow. Gain a real-time view of your security posture by bringing all the data sources together in one powerful platform where you can triage scanner results, generate powerful analytics and visualizations, assign remediation tasks, attest to your posture, and track progress over time. Now, as a satisfied PlexTrack client put it, we see PlexTrack as part of our strategy to move quicker and be proactive. Now we have a real-time view of what we need to focus on, and I have an easy way to show senior leadership. PlexTrack serves every aspect of the enterprise security team program with features designed to improve workflow, collaboration, and communication for each role, including red team data aggregation, import data from all your automated vulnerability scanners and tools, triage and report results in half the time. They also help improve blue team remediation. You can assign remediation tasks right on the platform or through simple integrations with the ticketing tools your team already uses and track progress over time. Now, stakeholder communications also there. You use a powerful yet simple analytics to attest to security posture and prioritize issues, even tailor attestation and communication to the needs of both team members and the C-suite. Continuous purple teaming assessments. Begin purple teaming or power up your current strategies with Runbooks, the best in industry tool for test plan execution. Security teams of all sizes and maturities can maximize the efficiency and effectiveness of their workflows with PlexTrack. Customers report that they see PlexTrack as part of our strategy to move quicker and be proactive, that the platform has a 5 times of return on investment in year one, and that gives their cybersecurity operations a 30% increase in efficiency. PlexTrack improves the entire security engagement lifecycle by making it easy to generate security reports, deliver them securely, and track the issues to completion straight from the platform. Book a demo today. Try PlexTrack free for 1 month and see how it can change your life as a security professional. Simply go to plextrack.com/twit and claim your free month. That's plextrack.com/TWIT. And we thank PlexTrack for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, it's my favorite part of the show. We actually get to bring in a guest to drop some knowledge on the TWiET riot. And today we have Mrugesh Chandarana. He's Director of Product Management at HID Global. Welcome to the show, Mrugesh.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Now, our audience loves to hear people's origin stories and their journey through tech. Can you maybe take us through a journey through tech and what brought you to HID Global?
Sure, absolutely. So my journey started back in the days when I was actually right out of the college. I was working on a project back in India for wide area network where we were implementing a video conferencing between different states and cities. And then I moved back here in the States in 2005 for my master's degree. So I did my master's from San Jose State University and then graduated in 2008. And I joined Edge Alliance as a startup that was in governance, risk and compliance side. I spent about 8 years there, but started as an intern in IT and then moved to technical support. And I was running the support team. And then I got an opportunity to move to product management. And that was kind of interesting shift from support to the product management. But I really loved that shift and talking with customers and solving their problems. Then I stayed there for about 8 years and moved to Whitehead Security, which actually yesterday news came out that that is in space of SAST and DAST for security testing, and it got acquired by Synopsys yesterday. And then I moved to RiskSense, which is vulnerability and threat management company, which got acquired by Ivanti last year. And then I joined HID Global as a director of product management, and I'm running the product line for our PKI and IoT business unit, which is focusing on public and private digital certificates and various use cases around that. So that's my journey.
Fantastic. So, we talked a lot about this before. I know HID Global is known for having trusted identity solutions, but one thing that we've seen in the pandemic is the need for specific technology for the remote work. And one of those things is digital signatures, essentially kind of exploded in the market. Can you maybe take us through what's driving that force? What are you seeing here?
Absolutely. So there are multiple facts. One is basically, of course, due to pandemic, people were working remotely. And when you need to get somebody sign a document, when you are in the office, you print it out, walk over the desk and ask person to sign the document. It was easy. How do you deal with that situation during remote work? There was no easy way to print it out, mail it to the person, and then get that signed. So then this whole notion of digital signature kind of came into place. There are kind of little nuances between digital signature and electronic signature where you can actually sign on a paper, and similar, you can sign on a document in PDF file and stuff. But then there is no concept of trusted identities, right? When you want to have the people who is signing the document, you want to make sure that the person who is claiming signing a document is the one who is signing it, right? How do you prove that? And that's where the digital signature idea came up, about linking that signature with the identity of the person who is signing it, and then creating that trusted identity ecosystem. Now, with pandemic, a lot of things changed. One of the use cases where we saw it went wild in beginning of the pandemic days was electronic notary. If you remember back in old days, where if you need to notarize a document, you would basically print it out and go to the store for notary, and you present your identity and get the document notarized, right? And they would put a stamp on it. Now, as we were not seeing people face to face during initial days of pandemic, the whole notion of e-notary came into place, where a lot of states actually passed the regulation during that time, which kind of increased the popularity of electronic notaries. And that is basically associated with the digital signature. So instead of doing that personal signature for the document, it would actually allow notaries to do that remotely through different platforms, which allow you to kind of go through remote signature, as well as you can also put the notarized seal, which is very important. And currently, I think there are about 33, 34 states who actually allow remote notarization today. And I'm expecting that in the future and near future, I think all of the states would allow that. But that's a shift what we have seen since the pandemic in digital signature space.
Now, I want to get into the technology because there's some interesting stuff. And obviously, you talked a little bit about how it's done today. Let's talk about the analog for a second, right? You said, normally people go and bring their documents to somebody who will then go and verify the identity of the person. And then have a kind of like a almost keep a track of when they did it. Can you maybe relate the analog technology to the current digital technology, and maybe what's the risk there in between those two things?
Sure, absolutely. So think about the flow of analog side, right? Where if you need to sign, get this document notarized, you go to the notary, present your driver license, and say, okay, this is Mrugesh Chandarana. Yes, I'm putting my signature in front of the notary, and then they put the seal and boom, and you put your thumbprint on the register and say, okay, this is when I had signed it, right? And you put the timestamp over there and your proof. Same thing about that in the e-notary digital world, where when notary, so typically notary has to get the state license and all that, so we don't get involved in that. But once they have the license, we verify that if notary XYZ present us and ask for the certificate, we give them the certificate, but link with that particular notary, right? So it's a trusted identity. We verify the identity. We ask for all the details, and then they go to the notary association to link their seal with the digital signature. So I think that's a good thing, that there is a proven identity of who the notary is, and then there's a proven identity of the from the state to associate that with the seal. Now, what happens with this other platforms which allow remote notarization is similar idea of when you submit your document, for example, on notarize.com, which is one of the platforms people use to get the e-notary done. That goes the submission of the document, and then you have to provide the proof, you as a person, to prove that you are getting that notarized. And then the person in front of the other side who is notary basically receive that proof, kind of verify all the details like what they do in the analog world, and then put that signature with the correct timestamp. And timestamp is the key for the document signing, right? And I'll go into little detail on that as well. But they put the timestamp in and then verify the signature, and that goes back to the user, and that's digitally signed.
Now, you did mention the timestamp. I think I want to dig into that first, because obviously I've seen a lot of digital signature companies out there. In fact, over the last 2 years, I think I've probably signed hundreds of documents remotely and online, and they use all different services. One thing I did notice is the fact that some of them, like you were saying, generate this thumbprint using the machine's timestamp. That seems like that could be spoofed in some way, right? Could that be vulnerable?
Yes, absolutely. So I think one of the key thing about timestamp is when you sign a document, for example, with Adobe Acrobat and put your signature in, what that does is typically they take the local timestamp and then put that on. Now, think about this. When digital certificate itself has an expiration date, right? So it's similar to the idea of your driver license, where your identity is not going to change probably for entire life, but your driver license is only valid for certain time period, right? 5-year, 10-year, whatever it is. And it has expiration date. Now, when that expires, you go to the driver license and get that renewed at the DMV, correct? Similar thing happened for the digital certificate. Each certificate has expiration date. Now, you can potentially spoof the system time, and even if the certificate gets expired after that time frame, you can spoof the system and use it if you are using the local timestamp. So you can actually, let's say certificate is expired yesterday, you can move your clock from computer and move it to yesterday and say, okay, my cert is still valid, but it's not in a legal world, right? So that's why this idea of trusted timestamp came up. And similar to the NTP or time server we have with the stratum 0 to stratum 1 and 2, all that, right? Which synchronize the time to the highest level. We do the similar in the digital certificate world, where there's idea of trusted timestamp, where certificate authority has a trusted timestamp server, which anybody can use to actually put that timestamp when they sign the digital document. And that basically allows you to prove that longevity, even after the certificate expired, you can go back and validate that this certificate, this document was signed at this particular time, and the time of signing the certificate was valid, right? And that's very important because you don't want to trust the document which is signed with the expired cert. So that's the time is very critical for the digital signature.
Really interesting stuff. And we have lots more to talk about here. And in fact, I want to bring my co-host back in. But before we do have to thank another great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that is Compiler, an original podcast from Red Hat discussing tech topics big, small, and strange. Compiler comes to you from the makers of Command Line Heroes, another of our sponsors, and hosted by Angela Andrews and Brent Simoneau. Now, technology can be big, bold, bizarre, and even complicated. Compiler unravels industry topics, trends, and the things you've always wanted to know about tech through interviews with the people who know it best. On their show, you'll hear a chorus of perspectives from the diverse communities behind the code. Compiler brings together a curious team of Red Hatters to tackle big questions in tech, like what is technical debt? What are tech hiring managers actually looking for? And do you have to know how to code to get started in open source? Well, episode 2 covers what can video games teach us about edge computing. The internet is a patchwork of international agreements and varying infrastructure, but there's something coming to change the ways we connect. Now, in this episode of the Compiler, hosts explore what edge computing can mean for people who enjoy video games and what this form of entertainment could teach us about the technology. Episode 9, how are tech hubs changing? Traditionally, if someone wanted a career in tech, they had to move to a tech hub, a city packed with startups and talent. But things are starting to change. The hosts of Compiler speak to a few of the change makers who are thinking about outside of the physical and social dimensions we've come to associate with innovation. Now, I really enjoyed the edge computing episode. They actually did a really amazing job of distilling down what edge computing is and just how practical applications make it more accessible. Learn more about Compiler at red.ht/twit. New episodes are out now. Go and download them at any time and be sure to check back for new shows. Listen to Compiler on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you listen to your podcasts. We'll also include a link on this episode's show page. Many thanks to Compiler for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, we've been talking with Mrugesh from HID Global about digital signatures, but I do want to bring my co-host back in because I'm sure they have lots of questions to ask here. I want to start with Mo first. Mo?
I just wanted to ask about how this, I'm all for anything that's going to make things more secure. As much as an IoT Luddite as I am, there are things that I do sing and dance about, including being able to conduct business without actually having to interact with human beings. So this is all exciting. How much do you think that this could be used to help with some of the things we talked about earlier with IoT devices, especially medical devices, as a way of securing or authenticating users in or other client devices into those?
Yeah, I think that's a great segue and question. If you look at the PKI as a foundational technology, which is a public key infrastructure, that is core for authentication and data encryption for any of the things you see around us, right? Whether it's enterprise or IoT. And it's especially important for IoT because think about us as a human being authenticating to the machine or device. We can type in a password and get login, or we can present our identity in terms of biometric or retina scan and identify ourselves to the device and then authenticate with it. Think about the IoT devices when they are talking with each other in the cloud or with the cloud services. So device to device authentication. And that's where the IoT use case for PKI is very important, where the digital certificate can establish that trust ecosystem between those devices and create the ecosystem where it can authenticate itself by presenting the digital identity in terms of the digital certificate when they are talking with each other. So you don't need passwords, and there is no way to actually put the password. It's not a secure way either. So digital certificate actually present the great way to do the device-to-device authentication. And on top of it, that layer, you can do the data encryption with the certificate as well. So it kind of, all in all, the PKI is a foundational technology which can help secure any IoT devices. And we see a lot of use cases nowadays around PKI used in the IoT side of the house.
Right. Curt?
Now, one thing I'd like to get a clarification on, the certificates that you're talking about, are these technologically the same as the certificates we're used to seeing in things like our encryption schemes for keeping communication secure?
Yes, it's the same certificate, the TLS certificate. You have seen on the website that little lock sign you see when you browse any website like hidglobal.com, you would see that little lock sign. And that lock sign actually is presented because there is a TLS certificate applied to that domain. And that makes it secure in terms of the client-server communication. And then it uses data encryption. So it's the same certificate, but multiple use cases.
Okay. Appreciate that. As you well know, we're an industry that is capable of using one word for a bunch of different things, and I wanted to get some clarification on that. Now, another thing, when we're talking about essentially authenticating an individual human's identity, it seems like this is the sort of thing where there would be a lot of different use cases for it. And I can imagine this being something that was very useful, in a lot of circumstances where you would want to have the mechanism for this, say, on your smartphone. Is that something that you are doing, or something that you are looking at the possibility of, essentially being an identity attestation technology that's divorced from any specific platform?
Yes, and HID is technically known for its physical identity and access management solutions. The access card reader you would see, and then the card or badges you would present to that door to enter to the door. It is all those devices has a capabilities to use the PKI as a backbone technology, right? So the same card you present at the door to enter to the building, you can present the same card to your laptop or a server to log into that device as well. And it's one identity which you can be using across your enterprise, right? So entering to the building, and there is a concept of a convergence between physical identity and the digital identity. And that's where the PKI comes into play, where it can be used across various use cases, including signing your email with the same card, or signing your digital document with the same card, or authenticating yourself against your computer, or log into the VPN. But PKI can be used in multiple ways across your enterprise use cases.
Very good. Well, now, one of the questions that I have as well, I know a number of people who are, in fact, notary publics, and some of them are very technologically astute, some are not. Is this the idea of being a digital notary, of making this capability available in the digital space? Is this something that you are seeing embraced by the associations of notary publics? Are you seeing lots of pushback? How is that industry accepting it as we're moving forward?
That's a great question. So when the pandemic started, I think it was kind of a chaos at that time, where people were trying to figure out how to do this. I don't want to shut down my business because I don't see the people in the public, but I want to find a different way to deal with the situation. And at that time, some of the states were allowing this idea of remote online notarization, right? And at that time, in the beginning couple months, it was kind of a chaos where people trying to figure it out and embrace that technology piece. But since then, it's a steady state, and growth is kind of upward in terms of adopting that technology and using that as a remote online notarization platforms. I mean, when we started this program, we had half a dozen partners who was actually offering this. Today, we have about 30 different partners who is offering e-notary along with us. So in last year and a half, the growth has been exponential for remote online notarization.
Well, I know we're getting close to time, but I've got one more question, and it gets down to an issue that I'm sure you've put a lot of thought into. On the purely digital side, we've talked a lot about Federated Id, and this is something that's been going on for decades now, where you would have one digital ID that could be used across all kinds of services and situations. The best we've done so far is one ID that's used within an organization. But do you see the possibility of your technology being useful for some sort of genuine federated ID that spans both the physical encounter world and the digital world?
Yeah, the federated ID and there is definitely as a backbone of that federated ID, you can certainly use that PKI as infrastructure. I mean, PKI has been around for many, many decades, right? It hasn't been leveraged in full capabilities, and people are still discovering new use cases around that. But you can certainly use PKI to establish that federated ID along with it. And PKI is embedded into all the devices, pretty much all the devices, I would say, you would see on your network, whether it's your router or your firewall or your Macs or Windows, any device we talk about, each of those devices has capability to recognize the digital certificate and use that certificate for authentication and authorization. So yeah, you can absolutely use that for the federated ID as well.
Mrugesh, unfortunately, time flies when you're having fun. Thank you so much for being here. We're running a little low on time. Before we close up, I want to give you a chance maybe to tell the people at home where they can get started, maybe learn a little bit more about HID Global.
Absolutely. So you can learn more at hidglobal.com. We have various product lines, but the one which I was more focusing on was PKI as a service. It's a managed private PKI, along with we provide the trusted SSL services as well, and that help you improve your security and reduce your cost of PKI. So if you are managing something in-house, we can help you improve the security of your enterprise network and reduce your cost. And thank you, Mr. Liu, for this opportunity to talk to the TWiET audience. It was very interesting.
Thank you very much. Well, folks, you've done it again. You sat through another hour of the best thing enterprise and IT podcast in the universe. So definitely tune your podcatcher to TWiET. I want to thank everyone who makes this show possible. It's definitely a team effort, and we have the best team in the market, starting with my co-host. Couldn't do the show without him. Let me do that again. 3. I'm having problems today. I don't know what's going on. 3, 2. This is definitely a team effort. I have the best team in the market, starting with my co-host, Mrs. Heather Mo Williams. What's going on for you in this coming weeks, Heather, and where can people find you?
Well, I usually have my snark on Twitter at Mo Better Wi-Fi. Aside from riding the startup unicorn that is Chandarana, it's been really exciting. We are really going to be able to help bridge the digital divide and bring broadband to everyone. And that includes little old me out in East Texas. So I'm pretty excited about the ability to actually help move more zeros and ones for people.
Thanks again for being here. It's good to see you. Well, folks, I also thank Mr. Curt Franklin as well. He's the very important co-host, and he's doing lots of things. What's going on for you, Curt, in the coming weeks, and where can people find you?
Well, I'm doing lots of writing about a number of different things. I've got some more pieces coming up over at Dark Reading. Had one for our subscribers at Omdia this last week, so lots of things happening there. I'm deep into my first half of the year research on cybersecurity awareness training. That's going to finally see the light of day sometime in July. But between now and then, I've got a couple of conferences I'm going to be attending. I'm going to be, of course, at RSA in San Francisco in June. And around the same time, the week before, I'll be in Las Vegas talking with the good folks at Splunk at their conference. So if you're going to be at either one, do let me know. You can always find out about what I'm doing over on TWiET. I'm KG4GWA, and would love to hear from you. I am doing some stuff there. I'm just all over the interwebs out there. I've got some stuff happening on LinkedIn. I've got things going on YouTube. I mean, I'm just a social media fool over here, and love seeing folks from the TWiET Riot pop up to heckle me on any of those.
Thank you, Curtis. Well, folks, we also have to thank you as well. You're the person who drops in each and every week to listen and catch our enterprise and get your enterprise news. But we want to make it easy for you to watch and listen and catch up on your enterprise and IT news. You go to our show page right now, twit.tv/TWiET. There you'll find all the amazing episodes that we do, show notes, the co-host information, the guest information. Of course, we have those links of the stories that we do during the show as well. But more importantly, next to those videos, you'll get those helpful subscribe and download links. Support the show by getting your audio version, video version of your choice. Listen on any one of your applications or any one of your devices, because we're on all of those podcast applications out there. So definitely subscribe and support the show. Now, you may have also heard we also have Club TWiT as well. That's right. It is a members-only ad-free podcast service with a bonus TWiT Plus feed that you can't get anywhere else, and it's only $7 a month. That's right. There's a lot of great things about Club TWiT, but one of them is the exclusive access to the members-only Discord channel, chat with hosts, producers, separate discussion channels. Plus, they also have some special events on there, so lots of fun stuff, fun discussions and channels, so definitely check that out. Join Club TWiT and be part of that movement. Go to twit.tv/Club TWiT. Club TWiT also offers corporate group plans as well. It's a great way to give your team access to the ad-free tech podcast. The plans start with 5 members at a discounted rate of $6 each per month, and you can add as many seats as you like. And this is a really great way for your IT departments, your salespeople, developers, your tech teams to stay up to date with access to all of our podcasts. And just like regular memberships, they can join the TWiT Discord server and get that TWiT Plus bonus feed as well. So definitely join Club TWiT at twit.tv/Club TWiT. Now, after you subscribe, definitely impress your friends, your family members, your coworkers with the gifts of TWiET, because we talk about a lot of fun tech topics on the show, and I guarantee they will find it fun and interesting as well. So definitely share with them and subscribe. Now, after you subscribed, we do this show live. That's right. It's live right now, live at twit.tv. We do it at 1:30 p.m. Pacific time on Friday. So definitely check that out, live at twit.tv. We can come see how the pizza's made, come see behind the scenes, all the times that I make mistakes, and all the banter and fun stuff that we do on the show as well. Plus, if you're going to watch the show live, you definitely should jump into the amazing chat room as well, our famous IRC channel. Yeah, that's at irc.twit.tv. We have a lot of fun characters in there each and every week. Lots of fun discussions. The co-hosts go in there. We get some great discussion points and questions in there. So definitely check that out at irc.twit.tv. Now, definitely hit me up on twitter.com/LewMM. There I post all my enterprise tidbits. I get a lot of direct messages about show ideas. Lots of fun discussions on there. Thank you so much for reaching out. Keep doing it. I really enjoy it. I find that I actually every morning, evening, lunchtime, walks, I check it and I have some great discussions. Definitely hit me up there. Plus, I also post about my daily work week as well. And if you want to learn a little bit more of what I do at Microsoft, definitely check out developers.microsoft.com/office. There we post all the latest and greatest ways to customize your Office experience to make it more productive for you. And don't forget, Microsoft Build's coming up real soon. We'll have lots to talk about there, about the Office development experience. So definitely check that out and bring that to your organization. I want to thank everyone who makes this show possible, especially to Leo and Lisa. They continue to support This Week in Enterprise Tech each and every week, and we couldn't do the show without them. So thank you, Leo and Lisa, for their support year after year. We couldn't do the show without them. Also want to thank all the engineers and staff at TWiT. Also want to thank Mr. Brian Cheebert. He is not only our co-host, but he's also our tireless producer as well. He does all the show bookings and the plannings for the show, so we really couldn't do the show without him. So thank you, Cheebert, for all your support. He's lurking in the behind the scenes here in the chat room. So good to see you there, Cheebert. I also want to thank of course, our editor for today, Anthony, and of course, our technical director for today, the talented Mr. Ant Pruitt. He does an amazing show called Hands-On Photography here on TWiT, and lots of amazing topics on this show each week. I learn every week. I take it on my walk. I listen to it. I come back. I try some stuff. And what's going on in that show this week?
Well, Mr. Lou, thank you for checking out the show each and every week. This time we talk about noisy photographs because we all capture them. We snap that shot one evening and go home and look at it and it's all grainy and noisy. We talk about how that's happening, why that's happening, and what you can do to denoise your images, including this one I'm sharing on the screen, which actually looks like noise. It wasn't noise, but we attacked it the same way to try to help this loyal hands-on photography listener out. So check us out, twit.tv/hop.
Fantastic. I'll have to check that episode out as well. Thank you, Ant. Well, until next time, I'm Louis Maresca, just reminding you, if you want to know what's going on in the enterprise, just keep quiet.
Hey, I'm Rod Pyle, editor of Ad Astra magazine, and each week I'm joined by Tarek Malik, the editor-in-chief over at Space.com, in our new This Week in Space podcast. Every Friday, Tarek and I take a deep dive into the stories that define the new space age. What's NASA up to? When will Americans once again set foot on the moon? And how about those samples from the Perseverance rover? When are those coming home? What the heck has Elon Musk done now? In addition to all the latest and greatest in space exploration, we'll take an occasional look at bits of spaceflight history that you probably never heard of, and all with an eye towards having a good time along the way. Check us out on your favorite podcatcher.